they can say what they want, but we won the race. We won it with a legal truck.
For us, obviously, I think that, the main goal is to win a race. I think that solves a lot of issues, if you're able to check that off.
Welcome to the Backstretch. I'm News 5's Heather Williams, and I will be without my co-host and sidekick, Chris Carrier, this week. If you follow NASCAR, if you really know NASCAR beyond just the Cup Series, and you probably already know the reason why. Chris's team raced in the Truck Series race down at Daytona. They won, or so they thought. Just about an hour after their win, they were in victory lane. They did the celebration. Chris and Parker Kligerman, the driver, went into the media center, did a little media, and when they came out, they were informed that their truck was too low and it had failed, and they were stripped of their win. So today, which is Thursday, as we tape this podcast, Chris was in Concord meeting with NASCAR, with the appeals board, the Racing Appeals Board, Motorsports Appeals Board, appealing their case on the disqualification. They did not win. Chris will join us briefly here in just a minute to kind of describe what their case was against NASCAR, what NASCAR said about it, so that you have a little bit of understanding as to what happened. And then more importantly, I wanted Chris to talk about what this means for his race team. If you don't know a lot about Chris and his race team, Chris is the only full-time employee at Henderson Motorsports. They have a bunch of part-time employees, a lot of former guys that were full-time employees at shops that are either older, retired, don't want to go on the road every week. And most of them are part-time, kind of almost in air quotes. Most of their time spent at the shop is volunteer. They work a lot of long, hard hours on that truck. They only show up to races they think they can win. So they only do about 8 to 10 races a year. And it's worked pretty well for them. They won 2 races with Parker. They won Talladega, I think it was about 6 years ago, and then they won a couple of years ago at the road course at Mid-Ohio. They get a lot of top 10s, a lot of top 5s. They show up to race every week. Winning this race, and Henderson Motorsports, I'm currently working on a documentary on the owner, Charlie Henderson. Henderson Motorsports is the longest running NASCAR team after the Wood brothers, continuously running, same ownership, same location, the whole 9 yards. 50 years Henderson Motorsports has been in the sport. This would have easily have been their biggest win of existence. And to lose that is somewhat devastating to the guys and gals that work on this race team. Just because they're just little underdogs. They're just a bunch of guys and gals that love being at the racetrack, and this has soured them a little bit. So I wanted Chris to talk about that because I thought it was important for people to understand like the whole picture from their side. NASCAR's side is out there. They've said what they think happened. But thus far, Henderson Motorsports side of the story hadn't really got that much attention, at least on a national scale. So I wanted people to really understand what their position was on this. So Chris is going to join us a little later to talk about that. We're also going to be joined by Josh Berry in an interview that I taped before Daytona. I'm going to go ahead and run it. Maybe not all of it. I might cut out some of the stuff that's a little dated. I might leave it all in. I haven't really decided as I sit here right here at the moment. But I just love Josh Berry's pairing with the Wood brothers. I think it's a perfect combination. He's a racer's racer. He's an old school short track guy. For the oldest team in the sport, I just think it's a great fit. And so far, they've run really well together. They haven't had the finishes that they probably deserve at the Clash or the Daytona 500, but I think good things are coming to the Wood brothers with Josh Berry. So we'll chat with him about some of that. And I guess I'm solo talking about the Daytona 500. What a crazy week. I mean, just being down there and the rain delay and the wrecks and the way the race ended and William Byron going back to back and all the debates about fuel saving and running around and trying to make it to the end. And then some of the questions of some of the moves that the guys that were up front were making, Cole Custer, John Hunter Nemechek, Riley Herbst, have all kind of been involved in conversations that have gone on this week about the type of racing that goes on at Daytona. And my thought on this is, we all know what this is. The fact that people complain about the Daytona 500 after the fact, when this kind of racing has been this kind of racing for years, does it look a little bit different? Sure. They were at times a little bit racier. I don't know that that's necessarily better. I was at a race at Talladega one year, which isn't Daytona, I know, but it's the same kind of racing. I was at a race at Talladega one year where the whole field, like 20 cars, wrecked on lap 3. That's brutal. Like, that's brutal. And this was like 2005, 6. I don't know. I'm kind of old, so it's kind of hard to remember. But that's just brutal. That's every bit as brutal as riding around for 60 laps and then starting to race, in my opinion, because you've taken out the entire field. Who is left to race? So, I'm always amused by the number of people that complain about the way this race plays out when it's always just been quirky. Remember the 2-car drafts where they were I call them dancing with the cars, because everybody was paired off in little 2x2 groups pushing each other. That was kind of rough to watch. So, I get being a pure race fan and wanting what we had at Bowman Gray every week. But even if you got that every week, you wouldn't like it because it would be boring. It would be predictable. Like, too much of anything is not a good thing. So I was fine with the Daytona 500 and the way it played out. It's not my favorite race. It never has been. I've never been a big fan of super speedway racing, but it was fine. It was fine. It was cool to see William Byron get the win, and I think that's all good. The biggest news of the week post Daytona 500 is the penalty on Chase Briscoe, and man, my man has negative 67 points headed to Atlanta. I know Joe Gibbs Racing is a great team. I know the 19 team is a phenomenal team. They're down to negative 67 points. That's rough. Now, he's going to get his day in front of an appeals board as well. I believe Joe Gibbs Racing is appealing that they're accused of altering a part. And Joe Gibbs Racing said it was a part failure, or stripped a nut or something that they had to replace. I'm not exactly sure on the language on that. We'll learn more when the appeal comes out. But if he doesn't win that appeal, that's going to be they're almost going to have to win and know that they have to win in the second week of the year. And considering the fact that the 19 team, as good as it is, as consistent as it is, Martin Truex makes the playoffs almost every year, or made the playoffs almost every year. They haven't won like 2 of the last 3 years as a team. And Joe Gibbs Racing was kind of miserable in the second half of last year. So winning is not necessarily a guarantee for that team. I think everybody thinks that Chase Briscoe will get a win with that team. Certainly not a guarantee. So that's going to be pretty tough for him. Be interesting to see how it plays out. Right now, I'm going to play my conversation I had earlier today. Again, this is on Thursday, with Chris Carrier about what happened with his race team's appeal to the Motorsports Appeals Panel. And then we'll talk to Josh Berry about moving to the Wood Brothers. And then I'll come back with my final thought. Just tell me a little bit about your case and why you felt like you guys should have won this appeal.
Heather, our case was built on not an infraction of a illegal part, or there was no illegal parts. There was nothing that was out of the rules except for the truck's heights off the ground, body heights. And they're measured at 3 places. One in the center of the front splitter. That's that kind of shelf looking thing for the layperson that is below the nose piece and will scrub the ground. They measure it in the truck series. They measure that right in the center, about 3 inches back from the front of the splitter, 2 inches back probably. And then on the spoiler, the rear spoiler on the left side and right side, they measure each of that. And there are specified heights that can be will be measured pre-race, pre-qualifying, and there are heights that it has to be at the pre-race stage, and then there are heights that each 3 places have to be post-race, and they give you some slack on both ends after post-race, and our truck was thrown out because our rear spoiler heights were like a 1/4 inch low on one side, 1/8 inch low on the other. The what our case was built on was that when the truck went through the height sticks right before that happened, there was some direction given by the NASCAR officials to our guys, our 75 team guys, and it was basically you unhook the front shock, which is a which is a rare thing. Nothing wrong with that. You do that, you're able to manipulate the front heights of the truck very easily. It's really even with just your hand because there's not much rate. There's what you call wheel rate in the front suspension. There's not very much, and that is by design, and that's legal. Where we felt like we weren't given opportunity was our guys were told by NASCAR inspectors to lift up on the front end after they took the shocks loose. And what that did, that lifted the front and it stayed at a height state, okay, that was higher than it needed to be by the allowed tolerances per the rule book. And it was actually like an inch, which is in a racing world is a mile. And we weren't allowed to, we weren't allowed to change that once the truck was lifted up. We weren't allowed to change that, and they put the height sticks on it. And of course, the front splitter was actually within the tolerance of pre-race, but it made the quarter panel heights be too low. And we argued the point that, like, look, we're not trying to, demonize anybody or call out anybody. It's just a simple matter of communication issue, just a human communication issue and a lack of getting my direction to your ears. And we presented 4 people who heard what was said. 4 of our guys heard exactly what was said, and then we know what was done. And at the end of the day, that was rebutted by the NASCAR officials. So at the end of the day, the 3-man committee, we were turned down, not unanimously, but by majority. So there was 2 against 1, and we lost our appeal, unfortunately, which was also, one thing that kind of bothered me, I wasn't there. I was in the media center, and I didn't have to be there. I knew that, but I did get some kind of request that was also refuted by the NASCAR representatives there. And probably the last time I go to a media center for NASCAR. So anyway, that to me was disrespectful to my position anyway, if not to me personally. And I've been in this stuff 50 years. So that's kind of our story. And we're going to stick to it because it's the truth.
So, I mean, I was there at Victory Lane with you. I know how excited you guys were, how excited Charlie was back at Abingdon.
Yes.
So the emotion, the range of the emotions, the disappointment level now, what is that like for your group?
It is speaking professionally as a professional, part of our profession and what we do, what I do, full time and professionally, and my guys they work part time and a lot of hours volunteered. There's no question about that. It's crushing, and I'll be honest with you. I think my level of frustration and just plain old hurt is more for, I call them my guys that are part of this and give their heart to it, than it is really for me. And I hurt for the Hendersons. I hurt for the Henderson family. I hurt for all the people who are part of food country in every way, in all our stores, all our locations, and even a lot of our customers who have expressed a lot of dismay and a lot of anger over this. So it's the range was when the race was completed, the final lap, and we came across the line first. I'll be honest with you, Heather, nobody's going to take that away from us. We won that race. We won it with a legal truck. We did everything we were asked to do to present a truck there to accomplish that win. And they're not going to take that from us. They're going to take the written. They'll take a lot of money from us and this, that, and the other. But I mean, I've been doing this 50 years, and I know now what it really means to win, and I know what winning takes. And they can say what they want, but we won the race. We won it with a legal truck, and a lot of our competitors actually. A couple of our competitors actually helped us, and everybody I've said, "You guys won that race. Don't let them beat you down, fair and square, no questions asked." So it is what it is. I'm a man of faith, and I believe that there are tough times. And this is a really tough time. Tough times never last. Tough people do. And I believe that an awesome God will not abandon you, even in those tough times. I know that. So it's okay. We're going to get through it. We're going to, we're going to, we're going to muddle through this a little bit. Let the dust settle. Let the smoke settle.
Joining us now is Josh Berry, the now new driver of the Wood Brothers number 21 car. First of all, Josh, thanks for joining us. I guess I have to start with this. What is it like now that you've had a race under your belt? What is it like to drive for the iconic Wood Brothers?
It's been a lot of fun. Obviously, Bowman Gray was, it's always a unique start of the year with the Clash, but Bowman Gray meant a lot to the Wood Brothers, right? And they have a lot of history there. So it was one that we had circled it of being a little, a little extra motivation, obviously, to run well and hopefully make the main event, which we were able to do, and that really meant a lot to put the 21 car into the race there, and it gave us a great opportunity to work with my new team, new crew chief with Miles Stanley, as well as my spotter, Jason. I've worked with him in years past, but getting back in the rhythm of that, so it was a great opportunity for us all to work together. I think everybody did a really good job. We made a lot of great adjustments from Saturday to Sunday and made the car better, and it was eventful and fun, but we raced our way in, and that was the biggest thing.
So now that we're at the start of the year, everybody for the longest time used to say, "Oh, Daytona's great. I want to win the Daytona 500," but the season really doesn't start until the West Coast swing. Well, now you start with two teams that are two wild card races. So I guess you can't really just like dismiss the first two races because then you're behind. So how do you approach the start of the season?
Yeah, it's definitely unique with the schedule, right? Obviously, Daytona, Atlanta, we know can be, wild card races to a point. And then we go to, Circuit of the Americas next, a road course after that. And so those three races, it's definitely a unique stretch of the schedule there. I think for us on the 21, like we want to compete and win the Daytona 500 just like everybody else. But also we really would like to leave those three races with some solid finishes. I think to me, we obviously want to run well and hopefully score stage points and walk out of there, with some solid finishes to start the year. Because the reality of it is if you look at those three races, and I include Coda in one too, just especially from my side of things, right? Is I'm not that experienced of a road racer, so that's one that always is a little extra intimidating for me. We always put in a little extra effort into those races, right? We want to go in and have a solid day. So, if we can have 3 solid weeks and leave that in a decent position in points and with little momentum going into the races following that, I think is our biggest goal.
So you mentioned goals, and that leads perfectly into my next question. Wood Brothers, one of the smaller teams, although iconic in the garage, but with the alliance with Penske, has shown to be a playoff team. So or at least have the ability to be one. So what's your goal going into the year?
Yeah, I think for us, obviously, I think that the main goal is to win a race. I think that solves a lot of issues. If you're able to check that off. Um, I think there's going to be a lot of good opportunities for that. Obviously, our alliance with Team Penske, they've been really strong at a number of tracks, but the short tracks come to mind, which is something that I have a lot of experience in my career, and we even saw glimpses of that at Bowman Gray, right? I thought the job we did and the car we had, on Sunday in the LCQ and the main event. I think we took a lot from that and can learn from that and apply it to places like Martinsville that we'll be going to. And yeah, I think for us, we want to be a playoff team. I think to be a playoff team, you got to probably plan on winning a race. So I think that's where our head's at really at this point. I think we want to, at minimum, be in contention for the playoffs come August and September.
So I'm going to take Daytona out of this mix because obviously it's the biggest race of the year. Everybody wants to win that. But for Josh Berry, if you could win one race this year other than Daytona, what's the race you'd most like to win?
There's a ton of huge races. I think to me, the ones that stand out, obviously Indianapolis is a place that's really, special to everybody in NASCAR. We got, PPG's going to be on board for that race. It's a big race for them. Obviously we have an affiliation with Team Penske. It's a big, that's a big Team Penske track that they've had a ton of success. So, a place like that is obviously big, but I think, to me, I think Darlington is a place that I would love to win at, and I ran well at last year, and I've ran well at before. I think that's an opportunity for us. And then always any of the short tracks, right? They're always a lot of fun to race at, and I think will be great opportunities for us.
So my final thought, I thought I would spend a little time and give a little praise to Legacy Motor Club. Their season last year was pretty miserable. They, as an organization, had probably as bad a season as you could have and still be competing full time. But they've looked better. I know it's hard to judge a season based on the Daytona 500, but I do want to give them their flowers, right? Jimmy Johnson finished 3rd, John Hunter Nemechek finished 5th, and Eric Jones finished 11th. I don't think that race team sniffed 3rd, 5th, and 11th the entire year last year. So for them to come out and do that, I think gives them a lot of confidence. John Hunter Nemechek was on the NASCAR media call this week, and I think they feel good about the way that the organization's going. I think it has a little time before it gets to where it's more competitive, where it can be consistently competitive outside of a super speedway. But man, is it nice to see 7-time running like 7-time can run. To see Jimmy Johnson running around in the back of the pack, in 34th place was darn depressing. This man is one of the top drivers of all time. He needs to be running up front. And to see him do that throughout the weekend, throughout the night, qualify on time, to not have to race his way into the Daytona 500, it was nice. So a shout out to Legacy Motor Club. Thanks for joining us on the Backstretch. We'll see you next week.